Good afternoon. I would like to express, first of all, satisfaction with the vote in the Security Council. The American resolution got 9 votes and would have carried, but for the veto by Russia and China, whereas the Russian resolution got 4 votes. And I think that is a good measure of the support in the Security Council for interim President Guaido and for the policy of peaceful political change and a democratic transition in Venezuela. I would say this council session was an improvement over the session on Tuesday when we had to listen to 35 minutes of falsehoods and absurdities from the representative of Venezuela. At this session today, we only had to listen, by my watch, to 11 minutes. So that's just 1/3 the number of ridiculous and false remarks about the situation in Venezuela. That's an improvement. Questions?
Yes, Mr. Special Representative, Pamela Falk from CBS News. What do you do, what does the administration do if Juan Guaido, when he returns, is arrested, detained, or anything bad happens to him? And what next, since the Security Council is obviously stalemated on this? Thank you.
I spoke Tuesday about the question of interim President Guaido's safety and mentioned it again today. One has to ask the question why the regime had not arrested him before he left the country to go to Bogota, and I think the answer to that is their fear of the popular reaction. I think that's probably the greatest restraint on the regime. There's also the global reaction, and I believe you would see a very considerable reaction around the world if they detain or otherwise harm interim President Guaido. I hope that's enough of a restraint on their conduct. Our policy is to continue with what we're doing. As I noted, we delivered more humanitarian aid today. We will continue to try to get it in. We also announced more sanctions this week, and there will be more after that. We will continue to put economic, political, and diplomatic pressure on the regime, and we think the internal situation in Venezuela is really untenable. The only question is, are we talking about a matter of days or weeks or months? And we hope it's as little time as possible, because when the situation changes, that's when the Venezuelan people will begin to benefit, first of all, from liberty, but secondly, from direct economic improvement.
Joseph Klein,
Take it to the General Assembly here.
We'll see what we think of what happened today and what happens next week. And, you know, when we come back to the UN, is something we'll think about.
Hi, David Wayner from Bloomberg News. To what degree are you concerned that this instability will spill over in a fragile situation in Colombia, and how vulnerable is Colombia to seeing sort of more instability there?
Well, it is spilling over. We've seen it. We've seen people killed on both the Brazilian and Colombian borders. We've also seen, obviously, very large refugee flows. And it's our view that if the Maduro regime remains in power, those flows will continue and indeed will increase. And there have been a lot of projections that the 3.5 million Venezuelans who have fled their country would become 5 million by the end of this calendar year if the Maduro regime were to last that long, which we doubt. We are trying to help, and we keep designating more funds to help refugees that are outside of Venezuela, particularly the largest number in Colombia. We think it would be very unwise of the Maduro regime to create further violence and instability, and we have informed the Colombians, as I think you know, that, to put it colloquially, we have their back.
an NGO?
Well, we've thought about a lot of arrangements. The problem has been that most of those agencies work with the regime. And when you hand over humanitarian goods to the regime, you don't know what's going to happen to them. I think it's been pretty well documented that the distribution of food, for example, through the CLOP program is not neutral and not based on need. Some of what's in there is stolen, and much of it is directed towards supporters of the regime. And we don't want to strengthen the regime, and we don't want to have money wasted on providing humanitarian goods that are going to be improperly used. But we're constantly thinking about ways that this might work.
Mr. Abrams, the Venezuelan ambassador launched a personal attack on you and on your history. Do you care to respond?
Well, you know, there's an old expression among lawyers in the United States that if you have the law on your side, you argue the law. If you have the facts on your side, you argue the facts. If you have neither the law or the facts, shout. And that's basically what he's doing. He's shouting and engaging in personal attacks, which just gets him away from the subject of the terrible, terrible impact of this regime on Venezuela and on the Venezuelan people. Thanks.